Joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk Director of Data and Indexes, Galen in Boston. Good afternoon, Galen. Good to have you.
Hi, Christine. Good to be here.
Good to see you. All right. So first off, let's get your reaction to the Federal Reserve's latest decision. Rates will stay at near zero, but it appears the prospect of rate hikes happening earlier than expected are sending jitters through the market. What's your reading?
I think this is kind of what the market was anticipating. It happened. I think, in my view, it's somewhat positive to see. I think a lot of people were nervous that the Fed might not take inflation seriously. And so to see, especially Chairman Powell's comments in the last hour, indicating a serious response and a willingness to do what's necessary in order to address a potential inflation issue. It's I guess, if you look at sort of Bitcoin as an inflation trade, as a lot of people do, including Paul Tudor Jones, who had comments on that earlier this week, the fact that the Fed is willing to address inflation might be a kind of a damper on that trade. But certainly, sort of the interesting thing here is seeing Bitcoin sort of track with the stock market today, down somewhat. And, that's always interesting to note, but it's tough to make a case for any kind of a, real joint move there or correlation. The correlation between Bitcoin and stocks is lower than it was at the start of the year, and it's basically near zero. So I'm not sure you can really make that case except in kind of anecdotal snippets like the one we saw today.
Yeah.
Still interesting to watch.
We did see it happen when the pandemic restrictions, the lockdown measures tanked the market, and crypto tanked as well. So there appears to be some correlations some of the time. Now, the crypto markets are down about 4-6%, and the U.S. stocks right now are down about 1%. I want to touch upon Steve Hanke's comments on El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin. He's saying it's stupid, but I'm not sure about his argument here that turning Bitcoin into legal tender in El Salvador will suck up the dollars there. What does he mean by that?
Well, as near as I could tell, what Hanke was talking about is the possibility that El Salvador could become a kind of a money laundering hub for criminals holding Bitcoin who wish to convert it into dollars. El Salvador is a dollar economy. So I guess that's possible. But I think where Hanke's right is maybe in the focus on on-ramps and off-ramps, which are really the regulatory pinch points for Bitcoin, more so than mining. And I think, last week there was a great deal of news about mining legislation, mining regulation in China. That news did not move the market. And I think that's a sign that the market is getting a little more sophisticated about this. Really, the regulatory points for Bitcoin are at the on and off ramps, and whether El Salvador will be able to reap any benefits or whether there will be some downside to their Bitcoin legislation, I think depends on how they regulate exchanges, Bitcoin ATMs, and other places where people might access the Bitcoin network. Well,
what are your thoughts on his argument that it will tank the economy?
The one place where I think that might actually be more sort of realistic and likely is in a more geopolitical sense. I think you've already seen some questions raised at the IMF. El Salvador is a U.S.-aligned country that recently has leaned more toward Beijing. And now as you see other countries, other small economies kind of making similar noises, looking like they might follow suit. You mentioned a legislator in Panama talking about it. We had a legislator in Paraguay last week, and Tanzania's president as well. So these small countries that, it kind of, if enough of them go the same direction as El Salvador, it probably puts Bitcoin into the conversation between entities like Washington, D.C., Beijing, the IMF. And that's a tricky position for a country like El Salvador. Which is small and, to some extent has to sort of, play the game with these giants.
It's a tricky situation for Bitcoin bulls as well, such as Michael Saylor, CEO of MicroStrategy, who just raised another $500 million worth of senior notes to buy up more Bitcoin, and I had a chance to speak with him the other day. He's trying to make the argument that Bitcoin is the payments rails for the US dollars. But if that is the case, then I wonder, well, then why need the US dollar if you're using Bitcoin as the payments rails? Why need fiat in any event? So I see these kind of arguments being made. I don't know your thoughts on that.
I think a more interesting argument is that Bitcoin becomes kind of like the gold of the 21st or 22nd century, having the same kind of geopolitical relevance as gold once had between economies. Bitcoin becoming a payments rail, I would say that Ethereum is far closer to that prospect. Ethereum being the primary network for stablecoins like Tether, USDC, and DAI. Being able to sort of get in and out of a dollar-denominated cryptocurrency, dollar-pegged cryptocurrency, is a kind of path where you see kind of different flavors of the dollar emerging. Your Tether for speculation on offshore exchanges, your USDC for speculation on onshore exchanges, DAI for lending and DeFi uses. I think that's a pretty interesting world emerging, but to date, it's not been emerging on the Bitcoin network.
Right. And Bitcoin is being used to be wrapped on the Ethereum network. So see how that develops.
And we've seen that, right? We've seen that use rise a great deal. And I think we'll continue to see that.